May I now request Madam Aruna Sundararajan to share her views with us. She has been the architect of the policy, and therefore your words would absolutely be vital for this audience here.
Thank you, Pradeep. At the outset, I'm glad I had the opportunity to listen to the three preceding speakers, because all three were extremely informative and I think identified very clearly what are the challenges and the issues that we have to address. So I basically want to go back to the topic that is there for today's discussion. And I want to address this question frontally first of all. Why do we need 5G? Because there are a lot of people who believe that for India, given that we have not even fully rolled out for 4G, why do we need to start talking about 5G? Is it not premature? The industry is under stress, it is facing challenges. On the use case side, there are not many use cases, and therefore, why should we really spend so much of time and energy at this stage on talking about 5G? And I think it's important to recognize, first of all, that 5G is emerging as a general purpose technology. And this is something that is inevitable. If we ask ourselves whether or how we would like to deliver any kind of new economy service to any individual on the planet, the answer is blindingly obvious, that everything is being sought to be delivered on the mobile. Apart from possibly food, housing and clothing, and even these you actually start buying them on the mobile, it's basically the new generations certainly are shifting to buying these things from digital intermediaries. But even otherwise, it is a fact that more than 50% of global trade last year was in the digital arena. And this is actually expected to grow even more. Therefore, if every single service provider believes that the primary tool for delivering any service or good is through the mobile, then clearly it means that we will be destined to have 5G sooner rather than later. There can be a question as to whether India is immediately ready, but I will come to that question as well. So the point is, one, it is emerging as a general purpose technology. The second is that it is also recognized clearly at the highest political levels globally that this is a new growth engine for the world economy. Why else would the president of the US or China or Europe, if you look at the level of attention that this subject is getting politically, globally, you will see that US Congress makers in the last few months have been spending hours trying to understand what is 5G, why is it important for a country, how does it affect global economic competitiveness, what is it going to mean for jobs. The same case with Europe. China, we don't even have to ask, because we know that China is making all-out efforts to position itself as the global leader in 5G. So this not only has huge economic consequences, it also has huge strategic consequences, because we know that Whether it is the trade wars or the military wars of the future, they will be fought in the cyber world. And therefore, 5G is going to be critical. When I said that 5G is recognized or is emerging as a new growth engine, this has huge relevance for India as well. We all know that currently India is facing a slowdown. We all know that it's too early to call it a recession. Hopefully we will not go into a recession. But there is a slowdown, and we need new growth engines. If you look since 1990, the digital arena, the digital sector has produced 2 growth engines for India. And I think we as a country, in our economic analysis, we have not adequately understood the role that ICTs have played and the role that telecom has played. In fact, I think it's time that some think tank actually does a study and maps how every new generation of mobile technologies has served as a distinct growth inflection point. We have seen a distinct movement upwards each time the country introduced a new generation of mobile technology. And therefore, for India, at this juncture, while we look for the new growth engines, given that many of the conventional growth engines are spluttering, we know for a fact that the digital sector is going to be one of the most important growth engines for India. And that growth engine can only be fired if we have the necessary infrastructure, the connectivity for that purpose. And that is precisely where 5G comes in. Now, for India, 5G is necessary from several points of view. First of all, if we look at the pure economic cost of providing services, I do strongly believe that the fastest and the cheapest infrastructure that we can actually build to deliver next generation services to Indians is digital infrastructure. We have heard from the government that 50 trillion rupees is the cost of conventional infrastructure that India needs to put in by 2023 if we have to achieve a 5 trillion economy by 2024. Now, a lot of that expenditure will still not enable the delivery of the next generation services. This level of infrastructure would be necessary just to bring down the cost of logistics and make sure that basic infrastructure is available. However, India has an opportunity to leapfrog to the next level of service provisioning if we can invest a fraction of this 50 trillion on 5G. Now, therefore, I think the answer to the question, does India need 5G? I think there can be no ambiguity about it. Maybe we can afford to wait for 1 year or 1.5 years, but I don't think we can really afford to wait beyond that. Because beyond that, let us also keep in mind that we are talking not about the India of 1975, we are not talking about the India of 1990, we are not even talking about the India of 2010. We are talking about an economy that is aspiring to be larger than the US economy in 10 years from now. We are talking about an economy that we already claim is the fastest growing major economy in the world. Now, given that level of aspiration, clearly our infrastructure ambitions also have to match that. And therefore, one of the things I'd like to suggest both to Rajan and to Pradeep, Why is it that in India 5G is not a topic that our parliamentarians are beginning to discuss? Why is it that every single chamber of commerce is not discussing 5G? Because this is the underlying technology for delivering all the goods and services of the future. I think we must, therefore, first of all, try and ensure that this debate does not remain restricted to the converted. I am speaking to the converted, you are speaking to me. We should be going out there and speaking to the others. So this is too important a matter to be left only to 3 telecom companies. This is an infrastructure for a country of 1.35 billion. So that's the first message that I want to deliver. The second message is, how do we get there? I think there is a fairly good roadmap available. A fairly good roadmap which also spelled out what should be the priorities. That first of all, let us look at how we can deploy. Not deploy it in an organic sense of waiting for the industry to first set right its fiscal issues, then complete the migration to 4G, then move to 5G, but actually give a policy push so that industry can be incentivized to move to 5G. And I think that's a paramount imperative that we must not lose sight of, and we must continue to work to push government to do that. But deployment is not only about deploying 5G radios. And I think that, again, the rest of the ecosystem must recognize that, first of all, where is the backhaul fiber? We need to put the fiber out there. We need to ensure that the rights of way issues are addressed. There are still far too many rights of way issues. We need to ensure that adequate spectrum is available. And I don't want to go into too much of detail because Rajan has already said what are the challenges in these areas. Pricing of spectrum, I think we need to continue to work. We need to step up these efforts. Given that these are challenges, I don't think the answer is that we say, all right, these challenges exist, therefore let us not move ahead. I think we need to put in much more efforts to move ahead. And for that, it is not too late. Maybe because whether it is the availability of spectrum or whether it is the pricing of spectrum, I don't think any of these is a closed issue yet. We need to ensure that in the next 6 months, as much work as is possible is done on these areas. But on rights of way, on fiber, etc., these are again areas where in the last 10, 15 years, I think we could have done a lot more. In the last 2 to 3 years, finally, I think people have woken up to the fact that fiber is absolutely essential. But that again is confined to the ecosystem that we normally address. This message needs to go out, and I was just telling Pradeep that let's see how we can carry this effort to all the states. Because the states need to understand this is not about a central subject called telecom infrastructure. This is about whether I, as the Agriculture Secretary, want to deliver smart agriculture to my citizen, whether I want to deliver smart health to my citizen. And if I want to deliver it on the mobile, it is incumbent upon me to ensure that that infrastructure gets built. I think we need to build a much stronger narrative about that. The second area where, unfortunately we don't have too many startups here, but there are excellent startups which are working. And we need startups in 2 areas. One is within the 5G ecosystem itself, there are several pieces where startups are working, but more needs to be done. But more on the application side, I think that is where India has an unprecedented opportunity to grow the business. And that requires a much larger effort. We need to work with the domain verticals, whether health, agriculture, education, entertainment, logistics, as well as with the startups. And our big ICT companies, we have opportunities to create the platforms on which IoTs can be rolled out. This is a huge growth opportunity, and I don't think we are really recognizing it enough. And that, again, I think it is not the telcos who need to be doing it. It is the rest of the industry verticals which really need to be working. I don't want to, so I just want to mention that 5G is also a huge catalyst for innovation. I think we have yet to get that message across. And hopefully, as we move forward, we will be able to draw in the rest of the sectors where these things need to happen. In terms of immediate steps, I hope that the government will work on the excellent start that they've made with the test bed. We need to keep the focus on the test bed because that is where a lot of experimentation and innovation can come in. We need to keep the focus on the IP, the startups that are doing work in the IPR. We also need to ensure that on the manufacturing side, there are already some green shoots. We need to nurture those. I'm not getting into the issues of security and so on, but given India's huge strengths in software, and given that 5G is as much about software as it is about telecom, I think a greater convergence between our ICT strengths and our telecom strengths would see India, I don't see any reason why we would need to be pessimistic. India actually has an opportunity to emerge as a leader in this area. And I do hope that with these kinds of efforts and initiatives that are being taken, we will be able to increasingly build traction in this area, coalesce all the stakeholders, and make sure that we get there sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much for setting up a very, very comprehensive agenda. And I can assure you that we will take up some of these initiatives as we move forward.